I secretly rented out my dad's lake house after he cut me off. Now he's begging me to stop. You rented out the lake house? Without asking me. My dad's voice shook like he couldn't believe the words had left his own mouth. I stood there, casually sipping from a can of LaCroix on the dock, watching him flail around like he was trying to process a nightmare. I didn't flinch. No, Dad. I didn't rent it out. I leased it. The word hit him like a slap. His mouth opened, then closed. Then opened again. He looked like a fish yanked from water, trying to breathe. Let me back up. This all started 3 months ago, the day he cut me off. And I don't mean emotionally, my dad isn't the warm, fuzzy type to begin with. I mean financially. Like, cold turkey, no warning. 1 minute, I'm his daughter with a solid side hustle and a pending promotion. The next, I'm being told to stand on my own 2 feet because 25 is too old to keep getting handouts. A handout, for the record, was helping with my health insurance after I got laid off and my benefits lapsed. We're not talking about some lavish allowance here. But he made it sound like I was draining the family trust. I've supported you long enough, he said that day, barely looking up from his tablet. Time to grow up. And that was it. No argument. No room for conversation. Just a line in the sand. The thing is, I had grown up. I was trying. I wasn't partying or racking up credit cards. I just needed a bridge, a couple months to recalibrate. Instead, he left me to sink. What Dad didn't count on was that the lake house, his precious weekend escape with the cedar deck and overpriced fishing gear, was technically in my name. It was a tax thing, originally. Back when I was born, my grandfather put it in a trust under my name for future use. Something about sheltering it from inheritance taxes. For years, Dad handled the property like it was his, and I didn't care, I was a kid. Then a couple months ago, I checked the paperwork out of pure curiosity, and boom. There it was. My name. My signature required for anything official. So when he left me high and dry, I didn't get mad. I got strategic. First, I cleaned the place up. Replaced the dusty decor, added some cozy throws, even hired a local cleaning service to deep clean every corner. Then I listed it on a luxury vacation rental site. Just to see what might happen. It blew up. Turns out people love Lakehouse getaways with paddle boards, a hot tub, and no neighbors for miles. My first guests paid more for a 3-day weekend than my dad ever spent on me in a year. And every booking since? Gold. I didn't tell anyone. I just scheduled the stays for the weeks I knew Dad wouldn't be around. Which, to be fair, was most of them. He mostly used the lake house for bragging rights these days anyway, something to mention at the country club. But now? He showed up unannounced and there were strangers barbecuing on his patio. His fishing rods locked in the supply closet with a note that said, owner use only. And now he was staring at me, confused and angry and suddenly a whole lot less powerful. I don't understand, he said. How could you do this without even telling me? I shrugged, real calm. Well, I figured since you're not helping me out anymore, I should use the only asset in my name to get by. You told me to grow up, remember? He blinked like he was just realizing the consequences of his own advice. This isn't what I meant. No? I asked, eyes locked on his. You said you were done helping me. So I helped myself. He stared at the house, the porch lights glowing warm behind the renters laughing over a game of charades. His voice dropped low. Cancel the listings. Right now. And that was the moment I realized I had a choice to make. I didn't answer right away. I just let the silence hang between us, thick and charged. The wind off the lake whipped around us, rustling the pine trees like they were eavesdropping. Dad's hands were balled into fists at his sides. He looked ridiculous standing there in his button-down and loafers like the CEO of a hedge fund who just realized he's been evicted from his own Airbnb. Cancel the listings, he repeated, this time through gritted teeth. I leaned against the wooden railing and crossed my arms, keeping my voice even. I don't think you understand, Dad. I'm not doing this to spite you. I'm doing this because I had to. His laugh was dry and hollow. Had to? You had options. You could have come to me. My mouth dropped open for half a second before I snapped it shut. I almost laughed. Almost. I did come to you. Remember that? When I got laid off? When I couldn't afford my prescriptions for a month and I asked for help with Cobra. You said I was too old to need saving. My voice cracked and I hated that it did. He didn't say anything. Just stared at the water like it might rescue him from this conversation. And now you want me to shut this down? After it's the only thing that's kept me afloat for the past 8 weeks. I gestured toward the house where the guests were still laughing. I've been paying bills. I've been eating actual food. I even caught up on my student loans. He looked at me then, really looked. And for a second I thought maybe he'd get it. Maybe he'd finally see that this wasn't some petty rebellion, that I wasn't a child lashing out. But instead he said, "This house isn't a business, it's our family retreat. It's sacred." I let out a low whistle and shook my head. Sacred? You haven't spent more than one weekend here all year. The last time you came, you left early because the Wi-Fi wasn't strong enough to check your stocks. That's not the point. No, Dad, I said quietly. That's exactly the point. And then something weird happened. His shoulders sagged. The fire left his eyes, just a little. "I didn't know you were struggling that bad," he said. His voice was smaller, less sure. "I just thought you'd figure it out like always." I stared at him for a long second, the part of me that still wanted his approval warring with the part that was exhausted from chasing it. "I did figure it out," I said finally. "Just not the way you wanted me to." He nodded slowly, like he heard me but wasn't sure what to do with it. The silence between us shifted again, no longer hostile but heavier somehow. "So what now?" he asked, eyes flicking to the house again. "You keep renting it out like some hotel?" I looked him dead in the eye. "That depends. Are you going to be in my way?" He didn't answer right away. Just stood there, stunned, like he couldn't decide whether to yell or beg. His pride wouldn't let him do either, so he just paced the dock in slow, frustrated loops. "You realize what this looks like?" he finally said. "You're taking advantage. Of me. Of something I gave you access to." "No," I said, crossing my arms. "You're wrong. I'm finally using something that was mine all along." He stopped pacing. His jaw worked like he was chewing over 10 different insults he couldn't quite say out loud. "You think this makes you look responsible? Like you're finally an adult?" "No," I said. "I think this makes me look like someone who got tired of waiting to be taken seriously." For a second, I thought he might actually explode. His whole face went red. But then he laughed, this weird, bitter laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "So, what? You just turn the Lakehouse into your personal piggy bank and expect me to roll with it?" "I didn't expect anything," I said firm. "That's the difference between us. I've had to stop expecting anything from you." He flinched like I'd hit him, and I hated how satisfying that felt. There was a long pause. We just stood there, two people on the same dock, speaking entirely different languages. Then he finally said it. "You know the bookings make it harder for me to come here." That stopped me cold. Because there it was, the real reason. Not sacredness. Not tradition. Just inconvenience. I was messing up his peace and quiet. "That's the issue?" I asked, laughing in disbelief. "You don't care that I'm finally self-sufficient. You're just mad I didn't ask your permission before disrupting your little escape plan." He looked down, and I knew I was right. "Unbelievable," I muttered, mostly to myself. "You really think this house is yours just because you've used it longer?" "I'm your father," he said quietly, almost like it was a trump card. "That should mean something." I nodded slowly, the ache in my chest flaring back up. "It does. Or at least it did." Then I hit him with it. "You want me to cancel the listings? Buy them out yourself." "What? Pay me. Book your weekends like everyone else. The house isn't free anymore." His eyes went wide. "You can't be serious." I took a breath and made the decision. The one I'd been tiptoeing around for weeks. "I'm not canceling the listings, Dad. Not unless I'm compensated for the income I'll lose. And not unless you start treating me like an equal, not a dependent you can scold into silence." The words hung there in the lake air, heavier than either of us expected. He didn't answer. He just turned, walked to his car, and slammed the door so hard the whole dock rattled. But he didn't leave. He just sat there in the driver's seat, staring out at the water like maybe he could turn the clock back. And me? I walked back inside, pulled up the booking calendar on my laptop, and stared at the next 3 weekends. Fully booked. I had a feeling things were just getting started. The first escalation came less than 48 hours later. I was halfway through prepping the Lakehouse for a new booking, a cute older couple from Vermont celebrating their 30th anniversary, when I got a call from the platform I listed the place on. "Hi, this is Amanda from Stabliss. We're following up on a report we received about your property listing." My heart dropped. "A report?" "Yes," she said, voice polite but all business. "Someone filed a complaint stating you are not the legal owner of the property." I almost laughed. "Well, they're wrong." "I understand," Amanda said. "But we'll need to verify ownership documentation to keep the listing live. Can you upload a title deed or trust document?" I took a steadying breath. "I'll send it within the hour." And I did. I found the scanned copy of the trust in my cloud storage, the one that clearly listed me as the primary beneficiary and title holder, and uploaded it, along with a pointed note. "This property was gifted through a family trust. Please feel free to contact the county clerk's office if additional verification is needed." Less than 20 minutes later, the listing was back up. Still, I knew exactly who reported it. My dad. No doubt hoping that some faceless corporate policy could shut me down since guilt and anger hadn't worked. But here's the thing, he underestimated just how far I was willing to go now that I'd finally stopped trying to earn his approval. The next blow came a few days later when the guests were already checked in. The husband was grilling on the deck. The wife was taking photos of the lake. And I got a frantic call. "Hi, is this Jordan? There's a man here. He says he owns the house." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. Tall guy, silver hair, wearing loafers and a North Face jacket? That's him. "Yeah," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "That's my dad." There was a pause. "Oh, okay. Should we be worried?" No, I said. "He doesn't have access. You're completely fine. He's just confused about the current arrangement." I called my dad immediately, my hands shaking with a mix of rage and something worse, embarrassment. He answered on the second ring. "Why are there strangers in my house?" "Because you rented it out for the last 20 years, Dad. You just didn't realize you were the guest, not the owner." "You're humiliating me," he snapped. "People I know have seen the listing." "Then maybe you should have thought of that before you threw me to the wolves over a health insurance bill." He hung up. That night, I barely slept. I kept waiting for the next move. And it came, like clockwork, 3 mornings later, an email from his lawyer. A friendly inquiry asking whether the trust's transfer had been reviewed recently and if I'd be open to co-managing the property in the spirit of family cooperation. I stared at that phrase, family cooperation, for a long time. Because if there was one thing this wasn't, it was cooperative. I knew then that I wasn't just dealing with an angry parent. I was in a Cold War. And this was his first missile. I closed the email without replying and made a mental note to finally use the free legal consult that came with my renter's insurance. But even as I plotted my next move, I couldn't help but wonder. How far was he actually willing to go? 2 days after the lawyer email, my mom called. Let me rephrase that. My mom, who divorced my dad 7 years ago and rarely called me about anything beyond birthdays and passive-aggressively worded holiday plans, left me a voicemail. "Jordan, I just got off the phone with your father. He's very upset. Whatever is going on with the Lakehouse, can you please just talk to him? He's not sleeping. He says he feels betrayed." I stared at my phone like it had grown legs. My dad had played the martyr card. To my mom. The same woman he cheated on and emotionally drained until she left him and never looked back. And somehow he was the one who felt betrayed. This was the part that messed with my head the most. Not the emails, not the drive-by guilt trips to the Lakehouse, not even the lawyer letter. It was the idea that he was actually crafting a narrative, one where I was the villain renting out the sacred family Lakehouse for blood money while he mourned in a corner somewhere. It didn't help that people were buying it. Uncle Ray texted me later that afternoon saying he didn't want to take sides, but maybe this had gone too far. Aunt Susan chimed in with a Facebook message of all things, telling me she hoped I'd remember what this house meant to Grandpa. I didn't reply to either. What I did instead was throw myself into the Lakehouse more than ever. I updated the listing with fresh summer photos. I added a few luxe touches, an espresso machine, a woven hammock, a shelf of curated board games that guests kept raving about. 5 stars across the board. Bookings out through mid-fall. I even raised the rate $30 a night. And people still bid. It wasn't just a side hustle anymore. It was a survival mechanism. But it was also, if I'm being brutally honest, revenge. Then came the day I found him inside. I drove up early to reset the place between guests, coffee in hand, only to find the front door already cracked open. I froze. It was broad daylight and my car was still halfway up the gravel drive, so whoever was inside had probably heard me already. My stomach sank. I pushed open the door slowly. And there he was, my dad, sitting at the dining table like he was waiting for dinner. The nerve of it almost made me laugh. "What are you doing here?" I asked. He looked up at me like I was the intruder. "You changed the code on the lockbox." "No, I just activated the digital keypad." "New security feature," I said. "And you still got in. So again, what are you doing here?" "I came to think," he said. "I needed space." I looked around at the half-folded linens, the guest keycards still drying on the counter. "You came to think in the middle of someone else's booking window?" "I built this place," he snapped. "I put in every beam, every screw." I didn't argue. I didn't tell him the actual construction was contracted and the closest he ever got to a beam was making a dad joke about how heavy it looked. "I'm serious, Jordan," he said. "You're crossing a line." "No, Dad," I said. "I'm enforcing one." His eyes narrowed. "You really think this is about money?" "I think this is about control. And I think you're losing it." That landed. He looked away toward the lake. And for once, I didn't feel guilt. I felt clarity. The silence stretched again, heavier this time. Then he said quietly, "You're better at this than I expected." And for one surreal moment, it almost felt like a compliment. Almost. Then he stood up, brushed past me without another word, and let the door slam shut behind him. I stood in that silence for a long time after he left. The kind that fills a room like fog, creeping into every corner, sticking to your clothes. Better than he expected? That's what he left me with? Like this whole thing was some test he orchestrated. Like he'd been watching from the shadows, waiting to see if I'd sink or swim. Not because he cared, but because he wanted proof I could suffer without him. It was like getting applause at your own funeral. I didn't even realize I was crying until one of the tears hit the rental contract in my hand. It smeared the ink just slightly, blurring the guest's emergency contact info. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my hoodie and snapped into motion. Stripped the beds. Reset the towels. Checked the fridge for leftovers. Scrubbed the glass doors until I could see my own eyes staring back, and man, they looked tired. That night, I drove home, dropped onto the couch, and opened a new tab. A long shot, maybe, but I started researching LLC formation, property management, insurance tiers. I even looked into hiring a cleaning service full-time so I didn't have to do the labor myself anymore. I was done playing small. And then, like it was summoned from the depths of irony itself, I got a text. From him. "I've reconsidered. I think it's time we talk about co-owning the Lakehouse officially. That way we can keep things civil and productive." Civil and productive. I stared at it for a while, like it was written in some dead language. He wanted a partnership now. After trying to undermine me with fake ownership claims, guilt-tripping the family, and literally walking into a rented house uninvited? Now he wanted to be equals? I didn't reply. Not right away. Instead, I forwarded the text to a friend of mine from college who was now a paralegal and just so happened to owe me a few favors from sophomore year. She replied almost immediately. "You say the word, I'll help you draw up an operating agreement that makes you 90% stakeholder with veto power." I stared at her message, the hum of my laptop fan whispering in the background like it was egging me on. And in that moment, something in me hardened. Not out of anger, but out of necessity. If my dad wanted to play business, I'd show him what that meant. Contracts. Boundaries. No more guilt-tripped favors dressed up as family obligations. I finally texted back. "Happy to meet. But we're doing this my way. At a lawyer's office." And that's when I realized I wasn't afraid of him anymore. Not of his anger. Not of his disappointment. Not of losing whatever sad illusion of us was left. I didn't need to fix things with him. I just needed to finish what I started. The day of the meeting, I wore the nicest blazer I owned. It wasn't for him, it was for me. A little armor. A reminder that I wasn't showing up as someone's daughter trying to defend herself. I was showing up as the legal owner of a highly profitable asset and the only reason he was sitting down at this table. The law office was in a glass building downtown, minimalist and cold, very on-brand for this kind of showdown. He was already in the conference room when I arrived. No tie, but his shirt was ironed, watch gleaming, hair a little too perfect. His serious but approachable look. I used to fall for it when I was a kid. Today it looked like a costume. The lawyer, mine, sat beside me. A calm, sharp woman named Bree who radiated the kind of quiet confidence you can't fake. My dad brought no one. I wasn't sure if that was arrogance or hope. We started off with small talk, which mostly consisted of him talking and me nodding at neutral intervals. Then Bree slid a folder across the table. "This is the proposed agreement," she said, smooth as silk. "It outlines a co-management structure with a 90-10 split, Jordan retaining majority ownership, decision-making rights, and profit control." My dad didn't pick up the folder. He didn't even blink. "I thought we were going to have a real conversation," he said, looking at me now. "Not just get ambushed with paperwork." I met his gaze. "We are. This is the conversation. You don't think this is a little extreme?" he asked. "I just want to make things right. You want control," I corrected, "and you're only here because you don't have it anymore." He leaned back in his chair, lips pressed thin. "I made that house what it is." I leaned forward. "No. Grandpa did. You just used it." Silence. He reached for the folder and flipped through it slowly, more for effect than understanding. I knew he wouldn't sign today. This was a power play meeting. A test to see how much I'd bend. But I didn't bend. Not when he said we were family. Not when he asked me to consider legacy. Not even when he finally leaned forward and said, quietly, "You're better at this than I was at your age." It wasn't a compliment. It was a confession. And maybe the closest thing to an apology I was ever going to get. When the meeting ended, he stood, folder still closed. "I'll think about it," he said. "I know you will," I said. "Take your time. The bookings aren't slowing down." He didn't smile. Just nodded once and walked out of the room. I stayed seated for a moment, letting the weight of it all settle. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about ownership in every sense of the word. It was a week later when the twist came, not from my dad, but from a stranger. I was at the Lakehouse again, restocking towels and replacing a broken corkscrew when an older man showed up on the porch. Flannel shirt, calloused hands, the kind of tan that says, "I don't wear sunscreen, I fix boats." "You Jordan?" he asked. I nodded, cautious. "Can I help you?" He stuck out his hand. "Name's Walter. I did the original plumbing on this place. Worked for your granddad for 20 years. The name clicked immediately. Grandpa used to mention Walter. Called him the only man who could fix a leak without talking your ear off. "I just wanted to stop by," Walter said, "because your dad, he's been trying to buy this land out from under you. Said he wanted me to back him up in court about ownership, maintenance records, all that." I felt something in my chest clench, then burn. "Wait, he's going to court?" Walter shook his head. "Not yet. But he's been asking around. Trying to build a case that you're mismanaging the property. Said it was his legacy and you're treating it like a cash cow." I stared at him, stunned. "And you're telling me this, why?" Walter gave a tired smile. "Because your granddad was proud of you. Said you were the only one in the family with any real backbone. Said one day that house would be yours and more than just paperwork." I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat coming fast and hot. "He really said that?" "Swore by it," Walter said. "Told me not to trust your dad with a screwdriver, let alone a property deed." We both laughed, but mine cracked halfway through. Walter tipped his cap. "Just thought you should know. Keep doing what you're doing, kid. You're running that place better than any of us ever did." He turned and left as quietly as he came, leaving me alone on the porch with nothing but my breath and a sudden rush of clarity. This wasn't about property anymore. This was about who I was going to be, someone who defended what they built or someone who gave it away to keep the peace. And I knew exactly which one my grandfather would have wanted. I didn't wait for him to make the next move. That same night, I drafted a letter. Not an email. A real, ink-on-paper letter, because some things deserve the weight of permanence. I told him I knew what he was doing. That Walter had come by. That I had documentation, witnesses, and the law on my side. That if he wanted to escalate this, I was prepared to take it as far as necessary. But I also told him something else. That I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. I mailed it the next morning, certified. No more texts. No more, "We should talk." I wanted a record of everything now. Because I realized something important sitting on that dock with Walter's words echoing in my head. My dad didn't just want the house. He wanted the version of me who still believed he had all the answers. And I'd buried her. Update, 2 months later. The Lakehouse is still mine. Fully booked through winter. My dad hasn't responded to the letter. No lawsuit. No late-night calls. Nothing. But I did get one thing. A package. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly, his. Inside was a photo. Me at 5 years old, standing in front of the Lakehouse, holding a fishing pole twice my height. My grandfather's arm slung over my shoulder like I just reeled in something important. Taped to the back was a single note. "I was wrong. You earned it." That was it. No signature. No apology. Just a rare, quiet truth from a man who never learned how to say one out loud. I keep the photo on my desk now. Not because I need his approval, but because it reminds me where I came from and how far I've built since. The lake still shines every morning. Guests still write 5-star reviews. And me? I've never felt more certain of who I am. I didn't win by beating him. I won by walking away without looking back.